Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session of T'nT. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd. In the church, we celebrated the Saints Marcellinus and Peter today. They were two martyrs in the early 4th century under the persecution under Diocletian. And, when we think about the martyrs, they're a great witness to us of the sanctity of life, but that ultimate witness they show to the ultimate love, and the love for God, love for others. So welcome everyone as you see you join in. Hopefully today we have better internet connection than we did yesterday. I thought today, with all that's going on in our society right now with the silent protest, but then also the rioting, the looting, and then also the whole aspect about the actions of police, I thought it'd be good to just go through a very fundamental thing today, and that is just the whole aspect of the sanctity of life. Because you see, I'm sure a lot of us have heard people's thoughts on things going on. We turn the radio on, we hear people calling in, people talking about different experiences. Watch the news, we see many reactions. Those who are trying to bring safety and order to things, those who are very upset, worked up emotionally, and then we hear those who are acting just purely on emotion. And part of that, some of them acting upon just anger or rage. And so we see this wide variety, and sometimes it's really hard to get a sense of well, how should I be seeing this? Because also there are things facts to the stories that we don't always know all the details. And that's really hard when we're trying to make decisions as to speaking out, what to speak out about. We want to make sure we're not just being reactionary to things, but we also have an obligation to make sure that we're bringing truth forward and bringing direction to things, trying to build a just and good society. And if we base things just on emotion, then we're always going to lead to trouble. And it's not that the emotions are evil, but the emotions which we all experience on a daily basis, the emotions are something that we have to learn to direct. Not crush, not suppress our emotions, because that is not healthy either. We have to learn to direct them, and we direct them by truth. And we direct them especially by virtue and all of the virtues. But the greatest of all the virtues, the virtue of charity, the virtue of love. Without that, how do we really love our neighbor? If we don't seek to really grow in our love for neighbor and that respect for their dignity, then it's always going to eventually lead to some type of injury of some sort, not just physically, but an injury to the goodness of society, to the common good. So I thought it'd be good just to today kind of touch on those principles on it, the principle of the dignity of life. If we have time today, get into what are we called to when that dignity is threatened, whether it's ourselves, and so then the question about what's legitimate self-defense, the question about how do you tie that in with turn the other cheek, and then also the responsibility of those who are entrusted with defending, so the police, those in military. There's really crucial questions there, and it has to always begin with the principles. So that's what I thought we'd go with today. And I'm just about to take my sip of cup of tea in my World's Okayest Priest cup. Today I'm drinking Irish breakfast tea, and let's see how I did. It's still really hot. Actually, it's still really hot. I'm going to wait a little bit for that. But to take a couple points from the Catechism, the section on the 5th commandment, Article 5 in Part 3, it goes through the different commandments in there. But just a simple way the Catechism puts it, I think it just strikes to the core. It says, human life is sacred because from its beginning, it involves the creative action of God. And it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator, who is its sole end. So God is the source of it, even though we cooperate in that creation with human life, but also the goal of human life is the ultimate end is God for our lives. And so that's why every human life is sacred. Whether a person even believes that God is the source of their life, or whether a person denies that God's our end, a person denies the existence of God, we'd say, but there is this reality. And it's not just some nice pious thoughts we have to make us think about life. We'd say, no, this is true about human life, and that's why every human life is sacred. And that's why every human life has to be honored, respected, protected, all right? And we're called to give witness to that sacredness to life. We do it by just how we do grow in relationships with others. So the great commandment, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then think of what Jesus said, what you do unto others, you do unto me. So even because especially our connection to the Lord through baptism, that dignity of life is so precious in the most smallest ways that the Lord's saying what we do unto others, we're doing to him as well. And that should always give us pause whenever we're thinking about how we react to people, how we treat people, to also have that awareness, I'm doing this to the Lord. Whether it's obviously through acts of mercy, acts of charity, that when we're trying to truly treat our neighbor with dignity, we're doing that to the Lord. That's why Gospel of Matthew 25, Jesus goes through, when he speaks about the judgment, he goes through these ways in which the king says to the person, when you fed me, when you clothed me, when I was hungry, when you visited me, when I was sick, or I was imprisoned. And the person saying, well, when did I do that? He said, what you did unto those, you do unto me. And then him going in the same way, when you didn't do these things. And the people responding, when did we see you hungry or thirsty and not minister to your needs? And he points out, it's when you ignored your neighbor. So that dignity of life, it begins because God gives it its dignity, sacredness of human life. And then that's why God has to reveal over time. Because we know from the very beginning, too, because of our fallen human nature, that respect for human life gets lost. The very first children of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. It begins because of envy. Envious of what Abel had carried out, and God very pleased with what Abel had done, and then Cain very envious that God's pleased with Abel. So how we treat our neighbor, we have to be mindful of our emotions. We have to be mindful of the vices, how those things can stir within us, and how do we direct them? And how do we help others? How do we help others, especially when people are very emotional at this time? And part of that emotion is understandable. Then most of us have, not all of us have seen the video clips there of what happened in Minneapolis. Now with that situation in Minneapolis, there's also a part that we don't know all the details, but we can see from a video an officer using what we'd say excessive action by kneeling on a man's neck for whatever it was, 8 minutes. And so to respect the dignity of life, there's that part of how do I really try to honor another person. At the same time, we have a right, because we have dignity, we have a right to defend our life if that life is being threatened. From the Catechism, when it talks about legitimate defense is not the same as, for example, someone seeking vengeance, revenge. Because someone did this to me, I get to do that to them. That's what we call eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That is not respecting human life. Even though that was what was called to in the Old Testament, the Lord Jesus brings us to the fullest understanding of how we respect human life. But what about defending ourselves? That the basic thing, I'll read this point from the Catechism, then I'll try to explain it. It's from 2263, it's from the Catechism. It says, the legitimate defense of persons and societies is not an exception to the prohibition against the murder of the innocent that constitutes intentional killing. The act of self-defense can have a double effect. It's the preservation of one's own life and the killing of the aggressor. One is intended, the other is not. And that with legitimate defense, it can not only be a right, but at times it can be a grave duty for one who is responsible for the lives of others. So when we're called to be able to defend our own life, one principle is that we cannot use a defense that is exceeding the threat that's being brought at me. give you an example. Let's say you and I, we got into an argument, a very heated argument, got very angry, then it led to a point of a fight. Now you say you try to hit me, I have a right to try to stop you from hitting me. The first thing I should do is try to get away from the situation. But if I can't get away from it, I have a right to defend myself. And therefore, if I use a force back, so you're trying to punch me and I punch you back, I'm punching you not to seek, my intention is not to hurt you and attack you. My intention is I'm trying to stop you from hurting me. And so that what is legitimate defense is in trying to protect myself, I can use a force to stop you. My intention is not to kill you. But if by that force I end up killing you because of it, let's say you're hitting me, you're attacking me, and I hit you in a way that ends up killing you, my intention was not to kill. I'm not guilty of murder there. But if my intention is to murder you, okay, now we're dealing with a different story. All right, Richard asked a question, okay, but what about property? All right, now you have a right to defend your property. It's part of your home. It's part of your livelihood. But then comes that question of, say someone's attacking my property, what is the way they're attacking? I can use a force to stop them from attacking. So let's say someone's looting my business, whatever. I can, if there's no legitimate authority to try to call upon to stop them, and that's we get then the question of the police, or in other ways sometimes with the military, that I should first try to help those who have been entrusted with that authority to stop those who are seeking to cause harm to someone. So those are the first ones I must call upon. But if they can't get there, and this person is trying to destroy my home, I have a right to try to drive them out. Now, say they're attacking with not only physical force, they're attacking with a weapon. All right, now in trying to defend myself, I can use a force that would be less than or equal to what they're doing. So give another example. Let's say, this is kind of morbid, but let's say someone comes after me with a bat, baseball bat. Now, that's going to be a blunt force. I can use some type of blunt force to try to stop them. But if they're coming at me with a bat, unless it's, what I say, it's coming with a plastic bat, I know that's not going to kill me. It's going to hurt if they keep whacking me in the face with it. That doesn't give me a right to break out a gun and shoot them. That's using a defense that's excessive to what is being thrown at me in a way. So with property, obviously a person's life has greater dignity than a building, but at the same time, a person has a right to have what they're using to, like take with these businesses, they're trying to provide for their families. So others don't have a right to come in and destroy that property. But furthermore, just to connect with the rioting and the looting, these businesses have nothing to do with the question about here, about police using excessive force, and in particular the question on particular community, the particular question about the Black community as in general, that are there times that there's more force used against them than against others. And that's something we have to look at. That's something our leaders have to look at and be involved in conversation with the people who feel that they are times targeted, or they feel that excessive force is used against them. But as we see with the looting, the rioting, people are using this excuse of something that needs to be addressed to then cause a greater harm to others. And that can never be justified. So what we see people doing here, people acting with destruction, that is never proportionate to the concern that with regards to abuse by, in this case, a certain police officer or 2 or 3 police officers, that does not justify this other reaction, this extreme reaction. And so that's why it's so important for us. We always have to start with the principle, the dignity of life. And when people feel that dignity is threatened, what is the proper way a moral way to address it? And part of it is people addressing it through protests. And protests are legitimate. They do it prayerfully. They do it peacefully. They can speak, and obviously even that with those who are leading the protest, what is it they're trying to bring forward? But as we've seen, others co-opt those moments to seize as a moment to promote something evil. So you can't justify, because one evil occurred here. Let's take this situation in Minneapolis. Again, presuming what we see in videos, we presume this was an excessive force used by this police officer, that what he has done was not defend the public good. He had then, a man that they had already retained, a man, the accusation was, had used counterfeit money at the store, and that's why the police were called in to address it. But as they're addressing it with the man, now it seems that they use this excessive force to contain him, especially to the point of the question of, did the force, not only was excessive just in itself, but did it actually even cause his death, which adds a whole new element. The question of, was this even murder that occurred here? But as people saying, this has been a problem throughout our country over decades, and especially in the cities, people are responding to say, this can't happen anymore. We're tired of this. Action needs to happen. That reaction by those, that's a goodness there. It's the reaction of then those that seek to do evil because someone else did evil. That's what we'd say is unjustified. And now it's just bringing forth more evil upon others. And then how do you stop that? When people are trying to destroy, okay, now those entrusted with defending the good of the society, they have to at times use a force. And then becomes a question of, how did they do that in a legitimate way to protect people? So as we can see that when we lose a sense of the principle of the dignity of life, when we get ourselves just caught up more and more in emotion and reactionary, it often leads to greater suffering. It often leads to chaos. And whenever there's chaos, it's going to reap even greater harm. So I just kind of touch on there, but I know there's a lot more probably to touch on with it. That's why I hope you post questions, because like Richard's question, I hope I brought some clarity to it, but I might have to go into more detail with it, because sometimes there are nuances. In moral theology, there are nuances. And it's not technicalities. It's nuances of what do we know God has revealed? What is it we're called to? And what do we know from right reason as well? So even someone who doesn't believe, what can we talk to them and help them to see through right reason and strive for the common good? And that's why when you read like ancient philosophy, when you read Plato, when you read Aristotle, they did not have faith, but they understood through right reason the common good. They understood what's justifiable, what's not justifiable. And so we can have conversation with people just knowing in faith brings a deeper element to it that we want to help people to see as well. And that, I went over time here. So we'll play a little Frank Sinatra. Even when we see challenging times, you got to keep remembering, hey, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. Frank tells us that. It's got to be right. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I never even drank my tea. I'll have a sip right now. Hopefully I don't get picked up, the song doesn't get picked up and then be silenced by the copyright people, whatever they're called. Delicious again. Many thanks to all of you. Rich Ruggiero for your question there. I know Tim Flair, Deacon Tim, thanks for joining here. Let's see what else we got here. Nemezia, David Furtado's with us. Fatima, and let's see, Kathy Cussy. Oh, yeah, she's here, I think, every day. Molly Oliver is here. Thanks, Molly, for coming. Sarah Parker's joining us. Kathy Volkman. Let's see, Shandol and Nancy Vincent. And my sister Andrew, who gave me this. But probably my other sisters, Molly and Jen, I know they watch. My niece Christina was one. She and Molly sent me the scones and the donuts, which were delicious. But anyway, many thanks to all of you. Remember the great gift of life. Thanks to Mom and Dad for being instruments for the gift of life. That myself and my siblings, and then because of it, many other nephews and nieces, and now great nephews and nieces. It's because I'm getting old and these things happen. Hope everyone has a great day. Keep one another in prayer. Keep our country in prayer, obviously. And let's hope we can bring that truth to help guide our society. We'll talk to you later. God bless everyone.